Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women Talking Money podcast. My name is Gretchen Betts from Magenta Financial Planning, and today I'm joined by Freya Swenson Costello. Freya is the owner of the digital marketing agency Freya Helps Me Limited, providing outsourced digital marketing to business owners and marketing directors who don't have the time or headspace to do the work themselves. She's also a mum to an energetic little boy, and she resides in the South Wales of the UK and loves a day on the beach. She's even known to dip her toes in the sea on Christmas Day. She's a registered Brownie leader, and she helps raise the next generation of girls, teaching them it's okay to be themselves and to embrace STEM. Freya is also open about her ADHD and autism and happily speaks to people about how to raise awareness and that there's nothing wrong with being neurodiverse. It's just a different way of thinking. So welcome, Freya, and thank you for joining me today.
That's okay. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Excellent. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the business or anything else you feel is really important that the listeners know about you?
Yeah, no, still. So I have been a limited company for just over a year now. I've actually just submitted my first year end, which is exciting and slightly overwhelming, but it's like, yes, it's done. But before that, I've been freelancing for 4 or so years. I I had my son went on maternity leave. COVID happened, and then I needed to find a new job that would work around me and my family. So I went freelance, and I have not looked back, and it's been lovely. And I think it's been great helping because both my parents have been self-employed as well, so I've always seen that and always had that the money chats and that understanding of what it might take. But I absolutely love working for myself and building up my own team, which is lovely. But for my own company, it started out by I basically wanted to help people and I wasn't sure what to do. I'd not worked in marketing and digital marketing and all that sort of that sphere, and spoke to past clients, and they're just like, we just need you to get stuff done. So we give you tasks, you do it. So I use my account management and project management skills, and I do that for my clients. And where I'm different to other companies is I sell myself on me. So I'm an upbeat, happy person, and there's a lot of people out there who aren't quite as upbeat and happy, and my clients just love working with me because they give me the work and I do it, and they don't have to think about it, and they get 4 or whatever days a month back in their diary where I'm doing the work and they're not having to. And it's great because I do it as a rolling monthly contract for a lot of my clients. So I won't tie them down to anything fixed. I won't force them to stay with me for a year or so. It's a case of, it just rolls on every month. And I've got clients who've been with me for the whole 4 years, and I'm so proud of that.
Amazing. And you should be really proud of that, definitely.
Thank you.
So you just said, interestingly, kind of sort of leapt into some of the conversation we'll no doubt have about, that your parents were self-employed, and those discussions were kind of active in your kind of memory and your kind of upbringing. But let's just take that step back a bit. What did you hear about money when you were growing up, or what can you remember, talking about as a family?
So it's kind of a funny one because I know my family are different to other families, but money is always a conversation. It's always a case of what the money is, what have we got saving, how much certain things cost, how much you need to be putting into retirement pot, all this. When bless my parents, my mum is very much a case of when she dies, what happens to the will, who does this, who does that, and it's very refreshing now. I can say it now that I'm older. Before, when I was younger, I was like, Mum, every time I come around, you talk about death and taxes. But now I'm older, I'm like, no, I get it. It's good. So I think always been open, having conversations about it and just understanding it. And I think that's why I feel relatively level-headed with the money side of stuff, and I think it's needed more. I think more people are getting more aware to it. I mean, you've got people like Martin Lewis, money saving experts, saying people need to talk about money, and they do, because you just need to make sure everyone knows where X, Y, and Z is and what the plan is.
Did you remember specifically, before she started telling you, when I die, this will happen? Do you remember?
It's enough. My mum does it.
No, it's absolutely. absolutely, like I wish I spoke to more people who had that relationship
Yeah,
with their family about money, because people can have very good relationships with family, but that you skirt around the edges. So
yeah,
it's really refreshing to hear that is part of the conversation. um but what about, as a child, do you think that they just were so open about money, and it be, as children, that you just naturally knew that like money was something that you needed to work out how you were going to get, that you were always encouraged
yeah.
to kind of earn?
Yes. So I mean, I had my first job from the age of 15. I mean, 16,
Yeah.
of earning my own money and just having, you work for, if you want something, you work hard for it, but also you save that money. You don't have to spend all of it. So I mean, I remember from as young as I was, whenever we would get given money or something for birthdays or Christmas presents, half of it would go into savings, half of it would be something we could spend. And I just knew there was, and I loved looking. It's like Bristol West. They had those little books, those bank books where you'd go in and you have your little statements in them. I remember even as a kid just looking at me and like, oh, it's gone up. Oh, it's gone up. Oh, there's a bit of interest, and just seeing that was quite nice. And then I remember the first time I actually spent that was on my driving lessons, but it was nice that I built this reserve up and I appreciated it. Don't get me wrong, as a kid, I was like, no, I want to buy the toys, I want to do this, but it gave me that understanding of you save some, you spend some, and there's a reason why you save what you can and how you can.
It's really interesting because I've been reading a lot about this kind of concept of what I would call mandatory saving,
Mm,
and then like discretionary saving. So we've always talked about mandatory spending and mandatory and sorry, discretionary spending,
yeah,
but the concept of mandatory saving and discretionary saving, but that's kind of what you're talking about.
yeah,
You would have to save that because that's the kind of future part, and then I'm saving this, but this is to spend on something that I need or I want, and,
once,
and
yeah,
there's quite different things.
yes, very much so. So I mean, these days it's a case of I have a similar approach that I have my money that comes in every month, and some of it all goes into the business account. Then I'll draw some down into my account. Then from some of that will then automatically get paid certain bills, pay the bills straight away, and then some of it goes into the family account. And then what is left in my account is my spending money and my fun money, and try and put some of that in savings as well. Basically, my bank accounts are busy at the end of the month, just moving it around in different places, but each place has a purpose and a pot.
So I'm really intrigued to understand from you, and this is going to go slightly away from the questions, but
So
given that, your bio is very much like open to talking about, your ADHD and autism,
yes,
and, this sort of thing can be really challenging. And clearly everyone's ADHD and autism are on different spectrums. And we know that there's a broad range, and I'm making
yeah,
a generalization here. But,
yeah,
a lot of people I talk to really struggle with this, even trying to
yes,
think beyond, like, even thinking that far ahead is quite difficult and
yeah,
hard to get your head around. So have you had to put in certain things as you've learned about how you deal with things to make it
yes,
easier in your
yeah.
neurodiverse mind?
So being neurodiverse, I am constantly craving the dopamine hits. And it's like little hits of like, done so, oh, I feel good for that. And it might be, oh, you bought something, oh, you feel great for that. Oh, this has happened. Oh, you've eaten some food. Oh, that makes you feel good. But it doesn't last. As a neurodivergent person, and I think a lot of neurodivergent people are like this is just my experience though, we're constantly needing those little dopamine hits. So it's trying to substitute it for something else. So instead, one of my dopamine hits is my money goes into my savings account. Oh, I've earned that interest it's this month. That's a different dopamine hit. Or that's why I take my money out and pay my bills straight away, and the household spending is in a different pot, and then what is left, that is my pot. So I know I can't go out. But from there, I even have a spare account where it just has £500 in it, and then that's my, oh, if I need to dip into something, I can dip into that, but I try and top that back up. So yeah, there's lots of dopamine hits, lots of it's so easy to just go into like so B&M or somewhere, just those sort of shops where you could just be like, oh, I'll have this, I'll have that, and it all adds up, and you love it at the time, but then when you're done, you're like, did I really need it? And a lot of the time you won't really need it, but it just makes you feel good. And it is a battle.
I think it's probably a bit of a battle for everyone.
It is for everyone.
Because B&M and Home Bargains make it really attractive to go
They
and
make
buy
it so
those things.
easy. Yes.
And I do think as well now in today's world where we're bombarded, like they can target us for the things that they
Oh yeah.
know that we like online. It makes that even worse because,
Yes.
my Instagram will be telling me that I really need these cat themed slippers. And
They'll make your life so much better.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I've really got to hold that in. So I think it's a bit for everyone, but I'm really interested in that actually what you've done is almost reframed that dopamine hit of I can get it from having good habits.
Yes. And I think what helps as well is I do a lot of my work about neuromarketing tactics. So for example, if I'm looking at a website, it's little things like having the call to action button, so that the how to get in touch button is always the same thing and having it repeated in different places. If you're in a shop, understanding that they'll pump out the smell of fresh bread or something because it makes your stomach start churning and makes you want to buy this food, or they'll put the quick small little things like the chewing gum by the tills because you're like, oh yeah, I'll just grab that as well. Or 99p. 99p sounds so much cheaper than £1. It's just being attuned and being aware of those little things. That's where you have to stop yourself, because otherwise it can just easily creep up. But don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. I don't. Sometimes I do succumb.
No one's perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah, I find it just really interesting to understand how you've approached it, and how you're just trying every time to make that work, which I think is all everybody can do, really.
Yes.
So, would you say that is crux about your budgeting system? As in, you've got the family account, you've got your account. That's how you're kind of managing it. And do you do all that management, or do you have a partner who also helps you?
So I've got my husband, and he's fantastic with Excel spreadsheets and all that sort of stuff. So we divide and conquer. So it's things like, I know that, so I will do our weekly food shop, but I know that's the budget and I'll try and stick to that budget. Or if there's something else, we both try and balance it together, because I think that's the way it needs to be. The household needs to be balanced. It needs to be equal. Doesn't, like I said, doesn't always happen, but that's life.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
and so, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, growing up though, I mean, my mum was a hairdresser. My dad was in the Navy, so my dad was away. My mum did it all. So my mum was the banker. My dad, he doesn't even have a bank card, because my dad is like me. But he doesn't have those control measures. He'd be like, oh, I could buy that. Oh, I could buy that. Oh, he popped into M&S the other day for an advent calendar, and he ended up coming out with 4 bags of sweets. And I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? It's like, oh, but they were there. I'm like, I know, but Dad, that doesn't. So my mum won't give him a bank card. She'll give him cash every week, and that's his budget. But that's their way of handling it. But mum will do all of the finances. She would have run the house, but it's because Dad wasn't there. So I think I've seen a strong woman handle it and know that you can do it. You can crack on and do it.
And I mean, that's amazing. But he also probably didn't learn the skills being in the Navy, because that wasn't something, you're on a ship, you're running, you're getting everything, you're getting your food, you're getting your board, you're getting everything.
Exactly.
You're not having to manage money.
Yeah, exactly. And he joined when he was 15, so.
Yeah. Wow. And so with your mum, and like when she was obviously managing all of that, working and bringing you up, like, has she ever spoken to you about like how she did manage that?
Yeah, she just didn't let Dad have any hands on it. that was the easiest option for her. But no, like I say, she's a hairdresser, and I think early memories of just her sitting there and watching her cash up at the end of the day. And she'd always be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sort of thing. And it'd be like, okay, so right, 520s, that make 100. You could get this with it. This money straight away goes into that special pot. That pays for the tax man. That special pot pays for the stock. I think it's a similar approach to how I am. Of you get the money, you divvy it out into those pots, and that's where it sits. And then what you're left with is what you've got.
And it was probably like a really great grounding seeing that her
Yeah,
running a business to then, when you went self-employed and freelance and understanding this concept of, profit first and putting away, your
yes,
tax man
tax.
money
Yeah,
before anything else.
yeah. I've always had the case of put X amount each month. That's a tax man. That's not my money. It's just put it away because I just have to pay it at some point. Rather than paying it each month, I have that big bill at the end of the year.
Yeah. And because that's quite a hard thing, especially if you're going from like employed to self-employed. And I
Yes.
speak to a lot of people about that, I really messed up in that first year. It's just so important to understand it.
It's so confusing and it's so scary. When I first started, I had my parents for how they were. I had really good friend of mine, Jo. She sort of really helped me and led me along, and she'd been years down the line, and I had this great community and support of other women. Because one of the groups I'm in is Mums in Marketing. There's lots of women there, and everyone's just like, what do we do? And it's questions of what do we do with our children, but also what do we do with the business, and what do we do if we're employed or self-employed, and having a community around you who can rally you on and just help you and just tell you things like, by the way, that first year you'll be paying a year and a half, so budget extra. Just knowing that, so knowing it's not just that last minute thing of like, oh, I need another how much more money. Having people around you who can just talk about, I think just having the community and conversations about it makes it's such a big important step.
Absolutely. And what about, I haven't touched on this, what about debt? And, what's your kind of approach or thoughts around debt?
I hate debt. It scares me. I think the biggest debt we have at the moment is the house. And I still love looking at every time we pay money into the house, pays off the mortgage, and I'm like, okay, it's slowly going down, little bit by little bit, little bit by little bit. But we're trying to pay a higher amount so we can pay off our mortgage quicker, just because then we can be like, right, well, we have more money left. I mean, we're in the steps now of where our son has just finished nursery, so now he's at school. So it's like, right, we don't have to pay nursery fees. This is lovely. However, say £100 that we would have paid into nursery fees, that goes into another pot. That's for summer camp. So we're not having a big bill. Just we're used to paying this money each month. That goes to summer camp. The what's left, that could potentially go for a holiday, or that could go to pay off the mortgage. So debt makes me uncomfortable. I don't like knowing I owe any money.
Yeah.
I like owning things outright, but I mean, it's a mortgage. You kind of have to.
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
have it.
And, in previous episodes, I've talked about, the good and the bad debt thing. It's like,
Yes.
a mortgage is a good debt. And if anything, what you're doing is your mandatory amount that you have to pay back on that is, yes,
Yeah.
paying some interest, but also doing
Yeah.
mandatory saving for you because you're
Yeah.
buying that house, so
Exactly.
buying
I
that
think that
asset.
the most annoying debt I have is my student loan. And I was that weird time where things started changing. I'm not this. I think I'm like, it's like £3,000 a year or something. And they constantly, I feel that they constantly change the terms of what they can do. So every year or every month, it's a case of, oh, this money goes off and pays off your student loan. I don't think I'm ever actually going to pay it off, but I know it's there, and I'm like, ugh, do I pay it on all off? Do I just sit on it? It's like,
I know.
yeah, it's one of those
There,
annoying things. But for my son, when he goes to gets to that age, it's a case of we are trying to save a little bit of money every month for him, so he has that pot himself. So we can say to him, right, this is your pot. You can put it towards uni. You can put it towards buying a house. You are not to blow it on fun. It's not what it's for. It is house or uni, just to help set him going. So yeah, trying to carry on those good habits.
absolutely. And I think, yeah. the student debt thing is confusing because
Yeah.
we could look to Martin Lewis for guidance here, but if you
Yes.
read all of his guidance, it would say that actually you might as well just, a lot of people, you might as well just keep it. You're never really going to repay
Yeah.
it. There are break-even points clearly with like how much you earn and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's probably it's kind of in the good debt camp, I would say, because it was to get you an education rather than
Yes.
just buy a telly.
Yeah.
But it's one of those strange ones, definitely. Yeah, that does play on a lot of people. I think it's like
Yes. Yeah.
that thing. How am I going to get rid of that? Should I get rid of that? What are the best
Yeah.
options?
And I think a lot of kids these days, it's a case of they don't know if uni is the right thing for them. And so it's going to be really interesting seeing what happens in the next 20 years. If more people do go to university, if more people do apprentices or do their own thing, I'm intrigued to see how it's all going to pan out, because I think things are going to change. Everything changes at some point or another, but that's going to be one of the big ones.
Yeah, definitely. I think it already is changing.
Yeah.
So, the statistics that are coming out, around university and also around the amount of male boys and girls that are going. Like, there's more girls going to university
Yeah.
than boys. So it's all very going to be really interesting in the next 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on a little bit, have you ever made a financial decision that you regret?
I was trying to think of this, and off the top of my head, I generally can't think of something, which I think is a really blessed position to be in. There's not been anything that I've thought, oh, I've lost loads of money on that. The big the biggest one I could probably think of is something silly such as my car, which was an old banger, but I absolutely loved it. It was my car. It failed its MOT, but just before it went for its MOT, I decided to fill it up with a full tank of gas, and I was just like, failed its MOT. It's not worth fixing it, but I've got 40 quid of petrol in there, and that was years ago, so that was a lot of money for me. I think that was probably the biggest kicker to myself.
And it definitely would be a regret for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely a regret. I sold it to the scrap man for 40 quid, and I was just like, there's 40 quid of fuel in there.
Oh goodness! But I think that's quite something to be celebrated if that's
Yeah,
the only thing that you can think of.
I think that's the only thing I think. There's probably more, but it was just that's the only thing I could really think of. I try to live positively and happy and good momentum, and so I try not to dwell on the past too much. It's a case of, if things do happen, it's a case of, okay, it's happened. What can you learn from it? What can we do to move forward? What can we stop that from happening again? What steps can we put in place? There's something positive from it. I'm one of those annoying people, my friends will say, that I'm always trying to find a positive.
I don't think there's a bad thing about that. I think that's a very good approach. So what about, would you say that as you've gotten older, your kind of approach to money's changed at all?
Yes. I think the older I've got, the more pots I've got. more little pots are just where everything goes. But yeah, I think I'm more sensible than I used to be. I'm more financially aware. I'm more a case of, okay, right, so this might be happening in the future. Let's research. What do we need to do? What do we cover ourselves to? I'm one of those people that and it's my coping mechanism being neurodivergent. I need to know as many facts as possible so I can explore all the options. I overwhelm myself. I over research, but I feel that if I know the facts, I can prepare myself for things. So when something happens that I haven't prepared for, that's when I'm then like, not so good. But by trying to be more aware of it, it calms me down.
And also, of course, what of course we can do is be more aware of how we can put those mechanisms in place in case of those things that you haven't planned for. So your emergency fund, the insurance to make sure that you can, have whatever you need done, or all of those things without panicking too much. And that's just about being organised.
Yeah, I am one of the most organised people you'll probably ever meet, but it's a coping mechanism, totally. I mean, people with ADHD and autism are not meant to be organised, But I'm like, well, I have to be organised. I need to know what's happening when it's happening. I'm the one that all of our friends will organise the night out, organise when we're meeting up, because otherwise it will stress me and play on my mind. If I know something's going to happen, but I don't know when it is, I can't. I can't relax that bit of my
Yeah.
brain. It's a case of, right, organise it. There, it's done. Tick it off the list. Now I can think of something else. I like to tick
Mm.
things off my list.
Really interesting.
Mm.
Yeah. So what about this one's kind of key at the moment in the people I'm talking to, balancing that the knowledge that we know we have to save
Mm.
with the desire to just enjoy money that you is hard earned, that
Yeah,
you're working for. How are you trying to balance that in your life?
I think the key to that is not being rigid, which is going to sound weird, I know, but I think it's a case of, right, we are coming up winter months. Christmas is coming up. Christmas will involve some spending. It won't be crazy amounts, because we've all of our families are basically being like, should we just not buy the plastic tat? Should we maybe buy experiences, or set a budget? So I know there's going to be some money coming from Christmas, so it's going to be a case of, right, for these months, I have to rein it back in to save that money. So some months you can spend more, some months you can spend less. It's finding that balance, which it's not easy, because you can go down a slippery slope, but just pace yourself and know what's coming up and when it's coming up and how you need to work with it. But also sometimes, if if you've done really well, if you've done, like for me, if I've done some extra work that month, I might be like, I'm going to buy that, whatever it is, that item of clothing of some sort or another, because I've worked really hard for it. But I have paid extra into my tax pot. That's a little bit extra fun money, because it's a I've gone above and beyond sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's for you as well, that's sort of all after you've thought about the other little pots of saving.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And what about what if I asked you what your biggest fear is about money? How would you answer that?
Um, not being able to have a roof over our head.
Yeah.
I think it's the big one, not being able to give my son what he needs, not being able to provide for him, not being able to feel like I have a safety net. Having a safety net is a very important thing to me, and that's why we build these things up. And knowing that there is no safety net, and knowing that I couldn't provide, really, really scares. It scares me, and it's not nice. But you just, I think I'm very lucky, and I work very hard to get where I am, and I know in my position I can be more privileged than other people can be, and I know it's the way the world is, but I'm aware of it, and I'm appreciative of it.
Just touching on that, because we did talk, I vaguely said something about emergency fund earlier, but thinking
Yeah,
about that, thinking about like ensuring that we'd at least have that essential in times of, I'll call it times of trouble. If you
yeah,
were sick, if you couldn't deliver on your jobs for a couple of months,
yeah,
um you know what multiple, like, how are you thinking, like, how big is that? I'm interested for the listeners, the other people who
yeah.
are self-employed, like, how big is that? And you don't have to give me a number, but like, how big
No,
is that figure? Do sort of, is it three times what of what you would spend in a month, or is it more than that makes you feel comfortable?
so I used to work off the fact that I would like to have at least 3 months money, at least 3 months definitely in one particular pot. And now it's a case of where I'm limited is I pay myself my money each month, but then at the end of the year, if there's any money left over, I draw that down as dividends. That's my savings pot. That's my safety net. Rather than having that safety net sat in my business bank account, I have it sat. So I have it sat in my own account as dividends, so it's
Yeah, it's
there.
like your profit. It's your profit that you've made, but
Yeah,
you're
it's
not
my
taking it all out.
yeah, but it's things like I found out I might have a potential big bill coming up in a few months, so I'm like, okay. Normally I'd be stressing, but I'd be like, no, there is a pot there. Don't panic too much. I mean, still, what can I do to try and reduce that bill? But there is something there, and then I'll be like, right, well that might go to that. So how can I top that back up?
Yeah, yeah. No,
It's
it's
all
just
finding that balance and having that fluidity to it, knowing that sometimes it might be okay, sometimes it might be harder, but yeah, but we get there in the end.
so. Have you got a goal that you're working towards, like a financial goal that you're working towards at the moment?
So every year I always see these whole New Year resolution things. What should you do? Oh, you need to be earning 10k a month sort of stuff. And I don't set New Year's resolutions because I think New Year's resolutions tend to not last. But I write down what some aims might be. And it might be I would like to go on a really nice holiday for the year or something. Or for this year's case, if I want my son to settle into school okay. That's not necessarily a financial thing, but it kind of is for me being self-employed because I'm the one who has to take the time off to settle him in. So I've then had to build my work up around that. So September I could be more hands-on for him and have that buffer in place.
Mm.
So yeah,
I personally think any goal that we set ourselves
yes,
has a. It might not be a big fun. I'm not talking about a
yeah.
big,
Yeah,
a
it
big
doesn't have to
financial goal, but
happen.
you're absolutely right.
Something to
Your child
work
being
towards, an
happy
aim. Yeah,
and settled at school does
yeah,
have a potential financial implication. And also, if he
yes.
didn't settle at school, that would have a massive financial implication.
Yeah, he's not been homeschooled. I love him to bits, but no, he goes to school.
Exactly. So, yeah,
I
I think,
I need to work for me. So when I gave birth to him and it was COVID and everything, I savagely lost who I was as a person. I became a mum, and that was it. That was all I could see. I didn't have a great birth. I mean, I almost died giving birth, and then I was just his mum, and then I'd lost my job, and it was just hard. And so going self-employed gave me back. I'm slowly coming out bit by bit by bit. I'm crawling out, and I'm now like, I'm me. I'm doing this. And where I've then submitted the year end for the limited company, I'm like, I am doing this. I'm really proud of me. I've worked for this. I've done it, and I'm back to how I used to be, and I absolutely love it. I'm buzzing. I got my fizzy energy back, and
oh,
it's just it's.
congratulations.
Thank you. It was a hard start. I think a lot of women did go through it. Giving birth in COVID times, or even just give birth in general, it can really knock your confidence. But we need to talk about it more
Yeah.
and get it to understand that it is the norm. It does happen to a lot of people, but build your community, find people to talk about it, get out there, talk about money, talk about how you're finding things at home, talk about yourself, moan, vent, just talk to people about it. The only way we can learn is from learning from others and sharing our own experiences.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Freya. And I don't know that I'm not going to ask any more questions about, because one of my questions was going to be about how can you name a joyful, a financial experience. But I feel that was like finding that flipping return and getting I can do this
Yeah,
moment.
yeah, it was a hard place to be in, but I'm finally coming out of it, and I feel like I'm back, and I love it. And I think that with the money side, it was the case of knowing I'm contributing financially to the family fund. I've got the safety net. My business is doing well. It's succeeding. My clients are happy. My clients' revenue is growing as well because of what I'm doing. I'm helping the world go around, and I'm loving what I do. And I love my work, and I love my clients. And I don't think I personally, I mean, the way I am at the moment, I don't think I could ever go back to being employed. But I've done that, And I've had that confidence, that brave step of just starting. And it doesn't work for everybody, and I understand that. But for me, it has worked.
Fantastic. Yay. So the final question then I will ask, because I do try and ask it of everyone. What does financial freedom mean to you?
I think financial freedom is knowing there's a safety net, knowing that even if the big bills come in, it's okay. There's a way to cope with them. It's not having to count the pennies. It's not having to put things back on the shelf, having to restrict yourself to the point of feeling negative and feeling really down. It's a case of, well, if you want to buy something, a nicer brand of food or something, you can do it. It's okay. It's not having to be like, I have to go to the reduced section to buy my food to feed my family. It's that, to me, makes me feel, I feel very grateful I'm in a position that I'm not in that way. And I like helping people. So that's why I'm a brand new leader. I help people how I can, because I think karma makes the world go a long way. You just got to be kind to help other people. And because I can be in a position where I can be kind to help other people, I will always try to, because you never know if you're going to be in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing with me today, Freya.
No
I've really
worries.
enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you for having me.
And, wishing you all the best, because it sounds
Thank
like
you.
going from strength to strength. And let's just, let's get, your son settled at school, the next
He's getting
year on
there.
your accounts, it'll all be good. So wishing you all the best.
Thank you so much.